Welcome to the podcast of Missionaries of the Precious Blood, United States Province, where we delve into the heart of our organization's mission and values. Missionaries of the Precious Blood, founded in 1815 by St. Gaspar de Buffalo, is a Catholic religious congregation dedicated to spreading God's love and mercy through prayer, community, and service. Our podcast serves as a platform to share the stories, reflections, and insights of our members as they strive to live out the charism of reconciliation and redemption. Tune in, be inspired, and become part of our mission to make God's love known to all. Welcome to the podcast of Missionaries of the Precious Blood. My name is Patrick Higgins. I'm your host. Glad to be here. And our guest today is Father Dave Matz, who is obviously with Missionaries of the Precious Blood, and he operates out of Berkeley, California. So, Father Matz, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being our guest today.
It's nice to be here. Thank you. I'm glad
Thank
to be here.
you. Well, I'm going to kind of delve into, first of all, how long have you been with Missionaries of the Precious Blood? When were you ordained, and what attracted you to the order? And again, this is not really, Missionaries of the Precious Blood isn't so much an order as a way of apostolic life, but
Yes.
for purposes of this podcast, we'll call it an order. So what attracted you to the order?
I joined the order in 1989 in formation. I was incorporated into the Society of the Precious Blood in 1994 and ordained in 1995. What attracted to me, I was looking at 3 different religious communities. What attracted me to that community was, number one, they like circles. And I remember sitting in a circle when I first went down to visit them for the first time, and a whole bunch of the missionaries got together and we just shared stories, and their stories just really resonated with my own, as well as the spirituality. So I think that's that first experience of just them coming together to talk with me and another guy who was looking at joining them just really attracted me. And it was an upper room, so it's very much like Last Supper-esque. We were in an upper room. So it was, ritualistically speaking, it was, that got my heart. Yeah. They were very much like myself. Very much like myself.
There you go. Okay, perfect. Well, kind of take us on your journey, through your formation and where you've been, either nationally or globally, with Missionaries of the Precious Blood.
I first worked in the inner city of Kansas City with Father Mark Miller, who was once a provincial of our community. And there, that was an inner city community, a subsistence community, in the sense that, hand to mouth, they were just surviving. It's still there, St. James. And one of our guys is still the sacramental minister there, on 39th and Troost. So I fell in love with inner city work. And then as a result of that, too, I was sent down for my special formation year down to Texas to live with Father Michael Goot, another missionary in the Precious Blood. And that was a Hispanic, a Latino parish. And that's when I totally fell in love with the culture. And they were so welcoming and to me. And I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with the language. After that, then I went to CTU in Chicago.
And that's Catholic Theological Union.
Yes, Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, Hyde Park. And I got my degree there. And after that, I went, after my degree, I went and studied Spanish for 5 months with the option of then going to Texas and living in 2 Latino Spanish-speaking parishes down in Texas. And so that's where I've always been involved in some way with Spanish speakers. And so it's been 30 plus years now since I've worked with Spanish-speaking people.
And then how long have you been in Berkeley?
I've been here twice. The first time from 2006 to 2015, I was here for 8.5 years, and then I came back in 2020, the summer of 2020, and been here since.
So you mentioned that you were that for whatever reason the Latino and or Hispanic culture community spoke to you.
Yes.
What was it about that specifically?
The way the family unit and the rituals, I remember Mother's Day, getting up early with the guys, and we'd go and serenade all the moms in the houses and stuff like that at 4 o'clock in the morning. Our Lady of Guadalupe, that festival starting 9 days before with the Novenario, and then with Our Lady of Guadalupe, my gosh, and for 30 years, that's been one of my favorite feast days, because literally when I was a pastor in LA, at St. Agnes, we would have at least 30,000 people pass through that corner in the inner city of Los Angeles. And that's always, everybody comes out. The roses come out, just the flowers and the songs and the music and the devotion to come at 3 in the morning so that you can have a place to sit in the church when Mañanita starts at 5, 5 a.m., and it's just, it's that kind of devotion, just, it's faith and vivo, lived faith and fe and vivo. Yeah. And that's what attracted me,
Yeah,
living faith.
you're not of Hispanic descent yourself, correct?
No, no, nope. I'm from Minnesota originally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You have done a lot of work with immigration, and as you know, in our country right now, immigration is a hot issue. So, can you kind of tell me what is the Missionaries of the Precious Blood's official stance on immigration? That's a broad question, I realize, but it's I believe one of the core tenets of the
It
organization.
is. It is one of the core tenets. As we were developing and coming together and creating this new creation of a new United States province, one of the former Kansas City province had a corporate stance on comprehensive immigration reform. And we've had that for many years, and we lived out of that. And when we came together to discuss the new creation, immigration was one of the 5 foci, the focuses of our new creation. And so I've been asked by the provincial council to start developing a communal outreach, whatever that looks like. We're still, in the research stage for immigration, what we as a community can do and educate ourselves. The basically, comprehensive immigration reform has always been a key part of who we are as missionaries of the precious blood. Matthew 25:35, for I was a stranger and you welcomed me. You remember the Jesus separating the goats from the sheep at the end of time. And when did we see you hungry and thirsty? When did we see you naked? And those who did see those but then didn't respond, they went off to eternal punishment. Those who did respond, because he said, when you did that to the least of my brother, the poor. Gasper always talks about, um, do not abandon the poor. That's a Gasper quote.
And
They are the
when you
image
refer
of
to
Jesus Christ.
Gasper, just for our listeners, Gasper, Saint Gasper, who
St.
founded
Gasper,
Missionaries.
founder of,
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the founder of St. Gasper is the founder of the Missionaries of the Precious Blood, and I urge you not to abandon the poor. They are the image of Jesus Christ, and that's what Jesus says in Matthew 25. When you chose not to do it for the least of my brothers, you didn't do it for me. You didn't do it for me. Or when you chose to help them, you did it for me. So those are the biblical and the communal foundations of comprehensive immigration form for reform. Sorry. And so social justice is also key parts of our charisms. Bringing people into right relationship, reconciliation, renewal. Uh, and so we always look for ways to create those spaces where people can feel equal in the eyes, not different from or rejected, but accepted. And so, so the comprehensive immigration reform is always to be, it has some really good tenets, provide a timely path for legal status for an undocumented person or those seeking asylum. I was just hearing in Missouri, it takes 20 years. There's one asylum court in the whole state of Missouri. It takes 20 years for people to get legal status. So the time wise, but that we need to work for that kind of reform as missionaries of the precious blood. Family unity, you hear about how families get separated at the border. Just and legal pathways for immigrant laborers. I can go on and on and on, but those are tenets to a precious blood stance when it comes to immigration. Ultimately, it's the human dignity. People, the Catholic social teaching. There's basic human dignity, and it's a legal and international right, a national and international right for someone to have asylum, to seek asylum if they're being persecuted too. So this is a way for us as missionaries of the precious blood to be in relationship and to foster places and safe places where people can be respected and their dignity respected.
Okay, that's enlightening. Let me ask you, in light of the ongoing conversation about immigration nationally, what's your stance, or what do you have to say to people who say, "Yeah, of course we should welcome immigrants, but they need to come in legally. There needs to be a system for it," versus the people who say, "We need to welcome all." And if that's an uncomfortable question, I can understand. But how do you reconcile those two lines of thought?
That's yeah. How I reconcile it is I research, and one of the things I found on that one itself, most people think that they come to the United States illegally. Um, I usually say it's a legal right for anyone to seek asylum. It's a cornerstone of United States law as well as international law, the Human Rights Initiative, right? From FDR way back when, and that tens of thousands of people, I usually tell tens of thousands of people migrate to the United States via the refugee resettlement program, through work visas, through to reunite with their families and more. Okay, so of those who come to the southern border, approximately 92% of the people who are apprehended at our southern border, they would turn themselves in to border control once they begin their asylum cases. So if they do cross the border, they turn themselves into border patrol. So they're aware of that what they're doing, and so but we don't hear those statistics. We just hear
Yeah.
they're entering in illegally. That's the spin. But when 92% of them actually turn themselves over to the border patrol.
Well, okay. Granted, that's fantastic. I was not aware of that myself. So, can you tell me how the congregations, how the missionaries of the Precious Blood's belief in the sanctity of life influences its immigration policy?
The sanctity of life. Again, that goes to human rights, and we've always been we've always been people who stand up for human rights and human dignity. Those are cornerstones to precious blood, because of the fact that all peoples have been drawn near. Ephesians, all peoples have been drawn near through the blood of Christ. There is no enmity between us anymore. We are brothers and sisters, and that goes beyond church boundaries. What happened in Jesus happened to the whole of the universe. So God's love is poured out to us through the blood of Jesus Christ, and we are the ones who put boundaries up. God does not, and God's love goes where God's love wills.
Does the missionaries of the Precious Blood do our views on immigration differ at all from the broader Catholic Church's teachings on immigration? Or are they pretty much in line?
Well, I think we have a variety on the spectrum, but the Catholic Church teaches they have Welcome the Stranger, which came out, I think, way back in the 90s, if not 1989. I think it may have came out originally. The Catholic bishops are always working for immigration reform, and the Catholic Church. So you'll always hear the bishops. Bishop Seitz, he's wonderful. I got a quote from him. He talks about how currently, what we hear about the border is spinned by the people. That's the thing about immigration reform and policy, is that it's at the whim of the politicians and the media and how they spin what's going on at the border. Bishop Mark Seitz is the bishop of El Paso. The Mexican side is Juarez, so El Paso and Juarez. And so he had a wonderful article last January, I believe it was, in America. And he talked about uh, people don't know, what's really happening in the border, on the border. Here's a quote. This is what it means to live on the border. And so this is the bishop talking, Mark Seitz. He says, enmeshed and implicated in the aspirations and hope of the poor, knocking on our nation's doorstep, the stark reality of death in the desert and in the waters of the Rio Grande, the joys and anxieties of those who are able to obtain safe passage, the frustrations of those who cannot. One also encounters the prosaic realities of border enforcement and border walls and broken immigration laws, the posturing of and compromises of politicians, the everyday heroism of ordinary people who live in those two cities. One hears Spanish and English. One encounters people Latino and Anglo from Mexico and from the U.S. One lives in a world. One lives in a world of quinceañeras and human trafficking. Corridos, those are the people that you see the pictures of people running from border control, and cowboy boots and Our Lady of Guadalupe, you know. And so he says there's a deliberate historical project to dehumanize what's going on at the border. And so in that quote from Bishop Mark cites is that, you know, there are real people who are really doing wonderful things with the people on the border. And I've been on 3 immersion experiences. People on the border, they're actually quite welcoming, and they do what they can to welcome the stranger, as the bishops call us to do, as our own, you know, immigration, as we develop our own immigration response as Precious Blood, welcoming the stranger. Does that make
It
sense?
make it
I'm
makes
sorry
a
I took
lot of
all that time
sense.
to do
It
Mark
no
Sites, but
no, it makes a lot of sense. And your actions, your own actions, and your own ministry echo that. Obviously, at Bishop Sites, you do more than talk the talk. You walk the walk. You've been to the border.
yeah,
Correct. Tell me about your
yeah.
experiences there, actually on the border, on the front line.
I've been, well, I used to work in Texas. I lived there but I lived more in the north central part of of Texas when I first started way back in 1995. Recently, 3 years ago, I went to the border myself with the Maryknoll Missionaries called Encuentro Encounter, um, and uh, and found that you know, everybody, there's, you know, the huge wall. I mean, the huge wall is incredible there in El Paso. Um, and being able to get through the border too, we went into Juarez and we got to see some of the refugee centers in Juarez, as well as some religious sisters who live on what they call Mount Ascension, and their whole life is to stand as witness, that human dignity is possible in a situation that it's not. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people disappear at the border. There's so much politically and economically going on at the border. It's incredible. And to have gone down there, to experience the economic plight, how our economic markets have controlled a lot of this displacement we're experiencing around the world. The world economy has caused a lot of this displacement. So to have that experience, and to listen to people's stories, there's so many stories, you
Yeah,
know.
I'd be interested in hearing some of their stories. They're all compelling, I'm sure, but are there any that particularly stand out?
I have tons of them. I have tons of them. The last time I was at the border, I met a man named Fernando, and he left Honduras because of the gangs down there. And what they do is they either, you know, they kidnap or they threaten to kill a relative, and they hold basically families or business people hostages. This guy had a contract. He was a construction boss, and he had to, you know, they were going to kill his parents, and so he basically packed up his family and his children, and he started the journey. It took him 6 months to get to the border, but they stopped along the way, and it was amazing. He was saying everybody was hospitable, you know. And what I really liked about Fernando was, I met him on this side. He had already applied for asylum, and he was staying at a refugee center at El Paso, with his 2 children and his wife. And he just said, you know, Father Dave, he said, God was with us through this whole experience. He said, I was able to stop and make money through construction throughout the whole 6 month journey to the border. So he's skilled, and, you know, he's skilled laborer, and he was an owner of a business, and he was looking to go to Sacramento. But they slept under the stars. He had a tent in his truck, but he left a middle class business in Honduras because of a threat to his family's life.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the stories can go on and on. I mean, I
Yeah, I
also know
imagine.
somebody here in the United States because I pretty much worked here in the United States. I never did get to go to foreign countries. In the 90s, they would go down and they would recruit people to come up here. And so that was right at the time that I was ordained. And so I ended up staying in the United States, working with these people, and a lot of them were either documented or undocumented. And and I worked with these people. I saw what uh, what ICE can do. ICE is the acronym, of course, um, and in the way that they can separate families and so on and so forth. And then just yesterday I was reading on CNN too, the bloody history around having our banana every morning, from Chiquita, and the settlement now that's happened with the nation of Colombia. And I was reading that too, in the sense that there's stories and stories, and then to actually go and work in Sedalia. This was in Sedalia, Missouri, where we used to serve, and I worked there with those people, to have to deal with the aftermath, you know, of a raid on a company. It's hell. I mean, the suffering and the division, and you don't know where your mom or your dad are, and their kids, and then the Latinos, they because of their corporate identity, their familial identity, they're able to group together and survive even that kind of division, that kind of sadness and torture. I would call it torture. Yeah.
Well, then,
Um,
then, then, what's the answer then, or is there an answer? I mean, how can we address the needs of undocumented immigrants within our individual communities?
well, I think our Justice, Peace, and Integrity Creation Committee is trying to do that, because we took a group of precious blood people down a year ago, February, so a year and a half ago, and we got them to experience education. Is what I'm saying. Education is very important. If you have an opportunity to go and learn what it's like, if you get to do an immersion and go down um, to the border, that's fine. But the border right now is just basically doing triage. They're listening to people's asylum requests, and then they're sending them off into the internal part of the United States. So so that's where we came up with the Justice and Peace Committee came up with the hometown immersion project, which we did last April. Um, in St. Joe, Missouri, because St. Joe, Missouri is one of the cities that, instead of uh, rejecting, or we came back from our experience a year and a half ago, and then myself, Nancy Clisby, a companion of the Precious Blood, and Gabino Zavala, another companion who lives out here in California, and the three of us came up with that hometown immersion experience, so that we could help people see that what's going on with immigration is not just what we hear down at the border, but there are immigrants who are integrating into um, our internal part of the United States, in cities within the internal part of the United States. And it's interesting, one of the other myths is that, that we hear a lot, is that these people are villains and criminals and that are crossing our border. Again, that's spinned for political purposes. Um, the mass majority, we had a police at that immersion at St. Joe. We had a police officer come in. The majority the majority of people who commit crimes are not the immigrant. They're the last people who want to commit crimes. When they want to work towards citizenship, and they have to keep their records as clean as possible, to avoid any kind of criminal activity, because of the fact that that can stain their asylum process. The mass majority of people, he says, are actually Anglo Americans,
Really?
people who are citizens. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Well,
not the undocumented or the immigrant or the asylum seeker.
do you know what does the path to legalization look like, and how long does it
Oh,
take?
We have a broken immigration system. Like I just was citing earlier, in Kansas City, there's one immigration court that hears all asylum cases for the whole state of Missouri. One court, one immigration court. And they actually interviewed it. You can get it. It was KCP TV, I believe, or something like that. Is that, anyway, that's in Kansas City. Anyway, um, and they interviewed an immigration lawyer who says, I've been waiting 20 years for one. And so asylum seekers, and the sad part is that, yes, you can seek asylum, and that's an international and a United States right for a person to do that. But on the average, only 8% of people who seek for asylum will get asylum. 8%.
8%.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why such a low number? Why is it 8%? Is that because of the sluggishness of the legal system, or is it for different reasons?
Well, that too is depending on where you're at. Okay, so there are statistics to show, like, if you seek asylum in, for example, El Paso, chances are more against you from getting asylum than not. If you go to New York or if you go to Chicago, chances of you getting asylum go up percentage wise. So it depends on where you're at and who the judges are. Again, the immigration system is really broken. And even the border patrol down in Texas, it's really up to politics and the politicians. Federal government is the ultimate, responsible, is the group responsible for any kind of immigration reform.
What role do you see the missionaries of the precious blood playing in the broader debate on immigration reform?
Well, I think we need to be voices of advocacy. We need to stand up and create those spaces where we can speak truth and help asylum seekers tell their stories, change the narrative, I guess is what I want to say. The law of God, or love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Those two things, welcome the stranger is a biblical notion from the Old Testament. You take care of the stranger in your midst, the widow and the orphan. These are things that God, and so when Pope Francis talks about a spiritual gaze, he says, ask yourself these questions. If you were a migrant person, if you were a hungry person, if you were an abused or an exploited woman, if you were politically persecuted, if you were trying to reunite with your family on the other side of the border, would not your opinions be different indeed? We live to show love to the other. It's not about me. It's not about the enshrined ego of the United States. It's about living for the other person. A spiritual gaze is about living that life of loving your neighbor as you would love yourself. Pope Francis also talks about, and he's been to El Paso and Juarez, and he gave a talk. He said there are four movements for us as Catholic Christians and Christians as a whole that we need to use to respond to our sisters and brothers. And he talks about welcoming the stranger, protecting the stranger, promoting their human dignity, and their human rights, the right to live a life where you have decent work and you can fulfill that life with your family and live with your family, and then integrate the immigrant into our midst. My family was an immigrant 5 generations ago.
And those immigrants that are already in our midst, as you very eloquently said, they want nothing more than what we want: stability, security, safety.
We don't even realize how, and this is where I got really challenged yesterday about my banana in the morning, because we don't even realize the blood that was spilled to have that one banana every morning. We don't even realize that journey that banana took from Colombia and Chiquita Banana Corporation, and how many lives were actually taken for our bananas.
So, Father Matz, is there anything that I haven't asked you, anything I should have asked you, or that you wish I'd asked you? Any kind of final thoughts? And again, there are no final words on immigration, but anything you'd like to touch on?
in my life, I guess I would say I like to quote a 15th century saint. His name is Bartolome de las Casas. He was from a very prominent family, and then came over and saw the plight of the indigenous people with the conquistadors, right? So the genocide that was happening at that time. What happened to him is he allowed himself to be converted by the humanity of the indigenous person that he encountered when he came to minister to them. They changed him. My whole life, as a result of my working and walking with, Pope Francis calls that accompaniment. So if I would give any last word, in Spanish it's acompañamiento, but it's not just accompanying people, it's allowing yourself to be changed, transformed by their stories, by their experiences, by their religion, by their faith, their devotions. That's my life. And that has been my life for the last 30 years, is that I have allowed the other, in accompanying them, I brought the story of Jesus. But as so often happens is when you enter into and you actually get and you're in relationship with the stranger, they change you. And that's what happened with Bartolome de las Casas. And so he says the big challenge is we always have to challenge ourselves in our historical moment today to change our perspective from the perspective of not where I am, but from those who are below, and allow that person to become the presence of Jesus Christ in our lives. Because, like St. Gaspar said, they are the image. The poor are the image. The stranger is the image. The immigrant is the image of Jesus Christ. And we need to respond appropriately in love for the other person. That's how I want to conclude.
Well, Father Dave Matz, thank you. This has been an extremely poignant discussion. I appreciate it. Anyone who wants to know more about the Missionaries of the Precious Blood, or the Missionaries of the Precious Blood, and the Missionaries of the Precious Blood's work on immigration, you can visit our website at preciousbloodus.org, and we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. Father Matz, thank you so much for your time. It's an enjoyable conversation, and let's hope that even just a little bit of this conversation makes a difference.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.